كله بس
السلام عليكم ورحمة
حتى
الله
الوايت.
وبركاته. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Math grade 5. Math grade 5. Today we want to learn how to add unlike fractions. How to add unlike fractions. So our lesson today, add unlike fractions. Add unlike fractions. Now, see with me this video.
Meow, 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 meow. Kids these days are addicted to screen time. But what if screen...
3/12 of a pizza at the pizzeria. This is how the least common multiples found. Write a list of each denominator's multiples down. The smallest number you can find in both of them is the least common multiple, aka the LCM.
The least common multiple can also be called the least common denominator, or LCD. It stays the same, and the difference are the sum when you subtract or add two fractions.
3/6 of a pizza minus 1/4. Find the LCM, which is 12, of course.
12 is the least common denominator.
Make equivalent fractions,
6 twelfths and 3 twelfths.
then do the subtraction.
6 minus 3 is 3.
3/12 of a pizza at the pizzeria.
Find the least common multiple, that's the first action. Next is finding equivalent fractions. Then do the addition or subtraction. Simplify like an automatic reaction.
2/4 of a pizza plus 1/5. It smells so good, we had to give it a sniff. The LCM was 20.
The new denominator,
We found equivalents quickly.
10 20ths plus 4 20ths.
14 20ths of a pizza at the pizzeria.
Find the least common multiple, that's the first action. Next is finding equivalent fractions. Then do the addition or subtraction. Simplify like an automatic reaction.
5/6 of a pizza minus 1/3. I knew the LCM was 6. And have you heard?
It's also called the least common denominator.
I found equivalent
5
fractions.
6 and 2 6.
Then I did the
5
subtraction.
minus 2 is 3.
3/6 of a pizza at the pizzeria.
Yum, yum, yum. Find the least common multiple, that's the first action. Next is finding equivalent fractions. Then do the addition or subtraction. Simplify like an automatic reaction.
Visit numberrock.com for exclusive content, lesson materials, and more. Thanks for watching.
Okay, our lesson today, how to add unlike fractions. How to add unlike fractions. Today we want to learn add like fractions. Like the two fractions here, I have here 7/5 plus 6/7. As you see, here we have this, here we have and denominator.
I can't hear you, Ustad.
I cannot add directly. So what I do, see with me now this video to know what I do.
Mister, I cannot hear you.
Hi, and welcome to Math Antics. In the last video, we learned how easy it is to add and subtract fractions that have the same bottom number. We call those like fractions. But often you'll be asked to add or subtract fractions that have different bottom numbers, or unlike fractions. And we learned that the only way we can do that is to change our fractions so that they do have the same bottom number. All right then, how do we do that? How can we change two unlike fractions into two like fractions? How do we get our fractions to have a common denominator? The answer is we need to use equivalent fractions. You remember what equivalent fractions are, right? They're fractions that have the same value but use different top and bottom numbers, like 1/2 and 2/4. They both represent 1/2 but with different numbers. Well, whenever we have two unlike fractions that we need to add, if we could find equivalent fractions to use instead, and if those new equivalent fractions had the same bottom numbers as each other, then we'd be all set. We'd have two like fractions and we could add them using our procedure. Okay, but how do we find equivalent fractions that have a common denominator or the same bottom number? Well, there's two main ways of doing it. In this video, we're only going to learn the first way of doing it, and I like to call this way finding the easiest common denominator. In the next video, we'll talk about another method that some of you may have already heard about. It's called finding the least common denominator. Okay, so how does this easiest common denominator method work? Well, even though this is an easy method, it might sound a little complicated at first. But don't worry, it'll make a lot more sense once you've seen a few examples. In this method, the common denominator is always going to be the product of the bottom numbers. In other words, it will be the number you'd get if you multiplied the bottom numbers together. Basically, all we're going to do is take the two different bottom numbers and make two different whole fractions using them. Then we're going to move the whole fractions to the opposite sides and multiply them by our unlike fractions. Doing this will give us two new equivalent fractions that will have the same bottom number. Then we can add or subtract them easily. Okay, let's try a couple examples so we can see this method in action. Let's add the fractions 2/5 and 1/3. These are not like fractions because they have different bottom numbers, so we're going to change them. And the common denominator we will use is the product of the bottom numbers. 5 times 3 equals 15. We change them by multiplying each fraction by a whole fraction. The first whole fraction is going to be 3/3 because 3 is the second fraction's denominator. And the second whole fraction is going to be 5/5 because 5 is the first fraction's denominator. Next, we multiply starting with our first fraction. On the top, 3 times 2 equals 6. And on the bottom, 3 times 5 equals 15. So our first fraction has become 6/15. Now for the second fraction. On the top, 1 times 5 equals 5. And on the bottom, 3 times 5 equals 15. So our second fraction has become 5/15. Now we just add them using our procedure for adding like fractions. We add the top numbers, 6 plus 5 equals 11, and then we keep the same bottom number, which is 15. So that means the answer to 2/5 plus 1/3 is 11/15. That's pretty easy, huh? All right, let's see one more example of this method. Let's add the fractions 7/8 and 3/10. Our common denominator for this problem is going to be 80, because that's what we get when we multiply the denominators together. 8 times 10 equals 80. We'll multiply our 7/8 by the whole fraction 10/10, and we'll multiply our 3/10 by the whole fraction 8/8. Then, when we do our multiplication, the 8 times 10 will give us 80 on the bottom of both fractions. For the top of the first fraction, we have 7 times 10 equals 70. And the top of the second fraction, we have 3 times 8 equals 24. Now that we have like fractions, we can just add the top numbers. 70 plus 24 equals 94. And keep the bottom number the same, 80. So 7/8 plus 3/10 equals 94/80. Some of you see that this answer could be simplified. Be sure to check out our videos on mixed numbers and simplifying fractions to see how you can do that for your final answer. All right, that's the first way you can find the common denominator and change your unlike fractions into like fractions so you can add or subtract them easily. Remember, practice is really important in math. So be sure to do the exercises for this section so you really get the hang of it. After that, check out the next video and I'll show you how to use a different
Now we have two new words, vocabulary. What's the meaning of unlike fractions? What's the meaning of unlike fractions? The fractions that have
Mister, we can't hear you.
what's the meaning of unlike fraction? Unlike fractions, the fractions that have different denominators. The fractions that have different denominators, like 1 over 3, like 1 over 3, and 6 over 5. As you see here, in the two fractions here, the denominators here are different. The denominators are different. Here we have 3, here we have 5. So I cannot add directly. I cannot add directly. This is the meaning of unlike fractions. When you see the different denominators, means we have unlike fractions. The second word, the least common denominator, LCD. L means least, C means common, D means denominator. Is the least common multiple of the denominators. The same idea of LCM. The same idea of the LCM. طيب, see now with me this video.
Mister, I have a question.
Yes, tell me.
So, Mister, what method do we use? The first method or the second method?
The first method.
We get it. You don't really want.
When I have like a fraction, means the same denominator, I add directly. But when I have the different denominators, means I have unlike fractions, so I cannot add directly. I try to find the LCED for the denominators, then I try to make the denominators as a common denominator, then I can add after the two steps here. Now listen to me.
Your kids watching videos, but it can have.
In the last video, we learned how to find what I like to call the easiest common denominator. And personally, I prefer to use that method of getting a common denominator whenever I can, because it's quick and easy to remember. But I can think of at least two cases where it would be better to use a different method to convert unlike fractions into like fractions. The first case is when one of the fraction's bottom numbers is a multiple of the other fraction's bottom number. And the second case is when your teacher says that you have to use this other method. This new method is called finding the least common denominator because it involves using the smallest common denominator we can find instead of just using the product of the bottom numbers like we did in the first method. To find the smallest or least common denominator of two fractions, we need to figure out what the smallest or least common multiple of the two bottom numbers is. Now, in case you've forgotten, a multiple of a number is just the result of multiplying it by another whole number, like 1, 2, or 3. So here's what we're going to do to find the least common denominator, or LCD for short. First, we'll take the two different bottom numbers and start making multiples of each of them. We start with 1 times the numbers, and then 2 times, and then 3 times, and 4 times, and so on. It helps to arrange these multiples in a small table, almost like a scoreboard, so that you can keep things organized and easy to find. We'll stop making multiples as soon as we find an answer that's the same for both numbers. That answer is called the least common multiple.
This is the first step to find LCD. Have here and have here 4. 3
ICT.
3 multiplied by 2 will be 6. 3 multiplied by 3 will be 9. 3 multiplied by 4 will be 12. Here, the next column here for the number 4. 4 multiplied by 1, 4. 4 multiplied by 2 will be 8. 4 multiplied by 3 will be 12. 4 multiplied by 4 will be 16. The multiplication table for 3 and the multiplication table for the 4. As you see here, the common number will be 12. So the LCD here will be 12. It will be 12. This is the first method to solve LCD.
And it will become our new common denominator. Once we know what the least common denominator is, we have to figure out which whole fractions we'll need to multiply our unlike fractions by to get equivalent fractions with that common denominator. The solution is to use the same numbers that resulted in the common multiple. For example, if you multiplied by 4 to get the common multiple for the first unlike fraction, then you'll use 4 over 4 as your whole fraction. And if you multiplied by 3 to get the common multiple for the second unlike fraction, then you'll use 3 over 3 as your whole fraction for it. Have I lost you yet? Should make a lot more sense after you've seen a few examples. Let's start with this problem. 3 over 8 plus 5 over 24. Step 1 is to take our two bottom numbers and make multiples of them to see if we can find a common multiple. First, let's multiply them both by 1. Well, that's easy. We have 8 and 24. Next, we multiply them both by 2, and that gives us 16 and 48. I still don't see anything in common, so let's multiply them both by 3. 3 times 8 is 24, and 3 times 24 is 72. But look, we have something in common now. We have a 24 in each column. We have found the least common multiple of the numbers 8 and 24.
See here, the denominator here we have 8, and here we have 24. So 8 multiplied by 1, 8. 8 multiplied by 2, 16. 8 multiplied by 3 will be 24. And here we have 24. 24 multiplied by 1, 24. 24 multiplied by 2 will be 48. 24 multiplied by 3 will be 72. As you see here, the common number will be 24. So the LCD here will be 24.
And it happens to be 24. That makes sense if you remember your multiplication tables, that 3 times 8 equals 24. So now we know we're going to use 24 as our common denominator. But what whole fractions do we need to get it? The answer lies in our multiples chart. To get our common multiple, we had to multiply our 8 by 3. So we're going to use the whole fraction 3 over 3 for our first fraction. And our common multiple for 24 was just itself. We multiplied by 1. So we could use the whole fraction 1 over 1, but we really don't need to since multiplying by 1 won't change anything. We already have the denominator of 24 on that side, so we don't need to change it. Okay, now we multiply. On top, 3 times 3 gives us 9, and on the bottom, 8 times 3 gives us 24, just like we wanted. Now we have like fractions, and we can use our simple procedure to add them. We add the top numbers, 9 plus 5 equals 14, and we keep the same bottom number, 24. Okay, ready for one more example? Let's find the LCD for these fractions, 2 over 9 and 7 over 12. Again, let's start by making a list of multiples for our two bottom numbers to look for a common multiple. 9 times 1 is 9, and 12 times 1 is 12, of course. 9 times 2 is 18, and 12 times 2 is 24. 9 times 3 is 27, and 12 times 3 is 36. 9 times 4 is 36. Aha! We found it. 36 is the least common multiple of 9 and 12. So we'll use that as our common denominator. Now let's figure out which whole fractions we need to use to make our fractions have that denominator. We use 4 over 4 for our first unlike fraction, since 4 times 9 was 36. And we use 3 over 3 for our second unlike fraction, because 3 times 12 was 36. There. Now when we multiply, we get two new but equivalent fractions that have a common denominator. Now we can add them with our simple procedure. On the top, 8 plus 21 equals 29, and we keep the same bottom number, 36. So that's how you use the least common denominator method. And it's really not that hard once you get the hang of it. So don't forget to do the exercises for this video, because the way to really learn math is to do it. Good luck, and I'll see you.
Okay, this is the meaning of least common denominator and how to add the unlike fractions. Right. Now listen to me to the example 1. Okay, the question here, write the sum in simplest form if you can, or if possible. The question here, 2 over 5 plus 1 over 2. As you see here, we have different denominators, so I cannot add directly. So the first step, try to find LCD of the numbers 5 and 2. So the first step, find LCD of 5 and 2.
How? This method, find the prime factors for the number 5. 5 equal 1 times 5. Then find the prime factors for the number 2. 2 equal 1 times 2. So LCD, the same idea of LCM. Take the common factors and the non-common factors. So we can take 2 and 5, the non-common factors, because just we have one common factor. 2 times 5 will be 10. Now the LCD will be 10. Now ask yourself, which number times 5 will be 10? 2. So multiply the whole fraction here by 2. Here multiply by 2 and here multiply by 2. The second fraction, ask yourself, which number times 2 will be 5? Which number times 2 will be 5? 5. So multiply the whole fraction by the 5. 1 multiply by 5 and 2 multiply by 5. So I can write now 2 multiply by 2 and down 5 multiply by 2. And the next fraction I can write 1 times 5 and here 2 times 5. Now the first question here, 2 times 2 will be 4 and 5 times 2 will be 10. The second fraction, 1 times 5 will be 5 and 2 times 5 will be 10. Now you have like fraction. Now you have like a fraction because now we have the same denominator. Now you can add with the same denominator 10, then 4 plus 5 will be 9. Then now 9 over 10, I can write as a decimal 0.9. You can stay in this answer, no problem, and you can change to the decimal. It's up to you, no problem. This is example number 1. Example 2, the question here, write the sum in simplest form. We have 3 over 4 plus 1 over 8. As you see here, the denominators here will be different, here 4 and here 8, so I cannot add directly. So the first step, try to find LCD. So take 4, the prime factors will be 2 over 2, because 4 equal 2 times 2. I can write as exponent 2 exponent 2. And 8 equal 2 times 2 times 2. I can write 2 exponent 3. So we have here common factor, the 2. Take it in the high exponent. So take it 2 exponent 3. 2 exponent 3 means 2 times 2 times 2 equal 8. So LCD here equal 8. Now look to the first denominator. Ask yourself, which number times 4 equal 8? Which number times 4 equal 8? Will be 2. So multiply the whole fraction here by 2. Multiply the whole fraction here by 2. And here we have 8. Which number times 8 equal 8? 1 means here the same fraction. Means here the same fraction. Just here multiply by 2. So I can write here 3 times multiply by 2, 3 multiply by 2, then 4 multiply by 2. And here the same fraction, because here we have 8, the same LCD. Now 3 times 2 will be 6, and 4 times 2 will be 8. So the fraction here will be 6 over 8, plus the same fraction here 1 over 8. Now as you see here, you have the same denominators, means you have the like fractions. So you can add directly here. How? With the same denominator here 8, here 8, here 8. Then 6 plus 1 will be 7, So the last answer here will be 7 over 8, And this form is simplified. So I cannot do here simplest form. Example 3, add, then write the sum in the simplest form. We have here 3 over 5 plus 3 over 10. As you see here we have 5, here we have 10. Means we have different denominators. So I cannot add directly. What I do, find LCD to the numbers 5 and 10. So take 5, Write the prime factors. 5 equal 1 times 5. 10 equal 2 times 5. The common factor will be 5. The non-common factor will be 2. So LCD means the common and the non-common factors. So 2 multiplied by the 5 will be 10. So 10 LCD equal 10. Now in the first fraction, here the denominator here 5. Ask yourself, which number times 5 will be 10? Which number times 5 will be 10? 2. So multiply the whole number by 2. So 2 times 3, so I can write here 2 times 3, then here I can write 2 times 5. The next fraction, here we have 10, the same denominator, means here keep the same fraction. Keep the same fraction. So here we have 3 over 10, the same idea. 3 times 2 here, 3 times 2 here will be 6, and 5 times 2 will be 10. Now I have now 6 over 10 plus 3 over 10. So as you see now, I have like fractions. I have like fractions because I have the same denominator. So add the numerators now. 6 plus 3, 6 plus 3 will be 9. 9 over 10, 9 over 10. I can keep here the answer as a fraction, and I can change to the decimal. It's up to you. So 9 over 10, I can write it as a decimal 0.9. 0.9. Example 4. Add, then write the sum in simplest form. Here we have 3 fractions. Here we have 3 fractions. The first one, 1 over 7, then plus 3 over 2, then plus 5 over 14. As you see here, we have different denominators. I cannot add directly. So the first step, try to find the LCD. Take number 7, find the prime factors, 1 times 7. Then take 2, find the prime factors, 2 equal 1 times 2. Then take 14, 14 equal 2 times 7. As you see here, no common factor between the 3 numbers. So take non-common factors, take 2 and 7. Take 2 and 7. So LCD equal 2 times 7 equal 14. Equal 14. Now, go back to the first fraction. Ask yourself, which number times 7 equal 14? Which numbers times 7 equal 14? Will be 2. Will be 2. So multiply the whole fraction here by 2. Multiply the whole fraction by 2. So I can write 1 times 2 over 7 times 2. 1 times 2 over 7 times 2. Plus. In the second fraction, ask yourself, which number times 2 equal 14? Which number times 2 equal 14? You will find 7. So multiply the whole number here by 7. So I can write here 3 multiplied by 7 over 2 multiplied by 7. Plus the last fraction here, 5 over 14. As you see here, we have 14, the same LCD. So here, keep the same fraction. Keep the same fraction. Now here, 1 times 2 will be 2, and 7 times 2 will be 14. So I can write here 2 over 14. And here we have 3 times 7 will be 21, and 2 times 7 will be 14. So I can write here 21 over 14. 21 over 14. Then here 5 over 14. Here 5 over 14. Now I have like fractions because they all have the same denominator. So what I do now, I can add directly now, add the numerators. So I can write 2 plus 21 plus 5. 2 plus 21 plus 5 will be 28. Will be 28 over 14. 28 divided by 14. 28 divided by 14 equal 2. Equal 2. And here we have some videos. When you have free time, you can see this video.
Mister, can you take attendance for boys first?
And this is our lesson today.
Mister, can you do girls first?
Mister, I said it first.
Okay,
Guys always.
who has a question now?
Do the girls first, please.
Now, my question now. Who has a question now?
One.
It's clear for all, but what is our lesson today? What we learned today?
LCD, unlike fraction.
Yes. How to add alike fractions and how to find LCD. How to find LCD. No question?
No.
طيب. Today attendance for girls. Today for girls. Yes. Then boys. يلا let us
No,
take a
Mr. I said it first.
أستاذ بس لا تنسى بكرة الأولاد أول شيء.
yes.
Okay. Asil.
Where is Asil?
Here, Mr.
Riyazia?
Here, Mr.
Jude?
Mr. We go.
Yes, you can. Yes, Jude?
I'm here.
Okay. Rinat?
Here, Mr.
Rawda?
Yes, Mr. I can go.
Yes, you can go. Shamsa Faisal?
Here, Mr.
Okay, Shamsa, thank you. Sheikh Ahmad?
Yes.
Hey, Sheikh Badr?
Yes, Mr.
Hey, thank you. Alia?
Sir. نعم.
Yes, Alia. Thank you, Alia.
Here.
Okay, Latifa?
Yes, Mr.
Thank you. Leen? 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 Where is Leen?
Absent. Absent, Mr.
Okay. Alia?
نعم, Mr.
Okay, thank you. Marwa?
Here.
Thank you, Marwa. Maryam? 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 Absent? Okay. طيب. مهرة فيصل? Thank you, مهرة. مو سعيد?
Here.
Thank you. نغم?
Here.
Thank you, نغم. نورة?
Here.
Thank you, نورة. هاجر?
Yes, Mr.
Thank you, هاجر. مهرة خلفان?
Yes, Mr.
Thank you, مهرة. طيب, all girls, you can leave now. Now we will go to the boys list.
مستر عندي سؤال قبل لا أطلع.
تفضلي.
مستر امتحان الماث بيكون open book صح؟ امتحان الماث بيكون open book صح؟
صحيح صحيح.
باي.
اوكي. بطريق.
مستر do we go?
Yes. حارب.
نعم أستاذ.
You can leave now. حمد علي. You can leave now. منصور علي.
مستر. نعم مستر.
You can leave now. منصور علي. حمدان الكعبي.
نعم مستر. نعم مستر.
Okay. خالد خليل.
نعم مستر نعم.
You can leave now. دانيال.
Yes.
Okay, you can leave now, Daniel. Diet. Diet.
نعم أستاذ.
Yes, you can leave now. Aid.
نعم مستر نعم.
You can leave now. Sultan Ali.
نعم أستاذ.
You can leave now. Sultan Ghazi.
نعم أستاذ.
You can leave now. Amir. Amir.
نعم أستاذ.
You can leave now. Abdullah Al-Hammadi.
نعم مستر.
You can leave now. Abdullah.
مستر
Yes.
مريم. نعم.
Okay, you can leave now. Abdullah Al-Jabiri. Okay, Abdullah, you can leave now. Abdullah Masood. Abdullah Masood.
نعم أستاذ. نعم أستاذ نعم.
Okay. Omar Ashraf.
نعم أستاذ.
Great. عمير الشامسي. عمر الشامسي.
أستاذ.
أستاذ I can leave.
Here. Yes. فلاح.
نعم أستاذ.
Okay, thank you. مايد.
نعم.
محمد أحمد الحمادي.
نعم.
محمد سعيد علي السريحي. محمد سهيل. مطاوع. معاذ.
Here.
Okay. Thank you, Muaz.
Mr.
Yes.
Mr. and Mary, I'm not absent.
Repeat your question, please.
تقول مريم مش absent. تقول here.
Mariam here. Okay. Inshallah, I will be here present. Yes.
أستاذ ما أقدر أدرس الامتحان إذا ما عندي الكتاب.
شوفي يا مستر ليش الشكل هم لازم.
هلا no need to your book. We do revision for all the titles in the last week and in the before last week. We do a revision for the GCF, for the simplest form, for the LCM, and how to subtract fractions, how to multiply fractions, how to divide fractions. I do revision for all these ideas, and you have PowerPoint in your group in WhatsApp or in your class dojo or the program here in Microsoft Teams, and you have videos. If you don't have the math book, no problem. You can back to your resource as a videos, as a PowerPoint, as a homework, no problem. And you can ask me if you have any. Okay.
Okay, Mr. Can I go from here?
Yes, you can. You can leave. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
The exam open book is you can use any resources to solve the question, no problem. Okay. So this is our lesson today. How to add the alike fractions using LCD, and how to solve the LCD. Thank you for your listening. Have a nice day. See you tomorrow, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.